What's up, everyone? I want to welcome you guys to the show today. This is our biggest episode ever and a huge accomplishment for Why They Ran. Today, we're going to be interviewing Angie Craig, U.S. Representative for Minnesota District 2. I hope you guys really enjoy the interview. It was an honor to be able to work with her, and I'll see you guys at the end of the video.
Welcome to the show. I want to say thank you for coming on, and I am really honored that you're here to be with us today. If it's okay with you, how about we just jump right into the first question?
Let's do it. It's an honor to be with you as well. I'm amazing that you're doing these.
So, what first inspired you to run for public office?
Well, to know why I ran, you have to kind of know a little bit about where I came from. I grew up in a mobile home park. My mom was a single mom. My grandmother helped raise us. And so I've always had this sense of, this opportunity in our country should be available to everyone. And when I was in my early 40s, I was at a local healthcare manufacturing company, and I realized just how incredibly lucky I had been. I was a journalist. I worked my way up to the leadership team of St. Jude Medical, a Minnesota startup success. And, I wanted to make sure that opportunities from kids like me, from families like mine in our community, had that chance and opportunity to be successful. So I stepped off the leadership team and decided I would spend the sort of next part of my career trying to help other people find that path to opportunity no matter where they came from.
Yeah, really good transition there. And then, was there a moment or experience that made you feel like you specifically had to step into politics?
I keep thinking back every time I get that question to it was a ballot initiative in Minnesota, um, run by a group called Minnesotans United. And look, my wife and I, we have four sons. Our family prior to 2013 were not acknowledged or recognized under the law. And so
Mhm.
as I think back to sort of the constitutional amendment that would have banned my ability to marry the person I'd been with for decades, and recognize my family, I think it was that moment in time where I realized that I wanted to be more involved in public policy. And so, I got into politics 2 or 3 years later.
Yeah, so really strong personal motivated there. And then sort of shifting towards like some challenges and rewards that come from public service. Since being elected, what has been the most rewarding part of serving in Congress for you personally?
When I first was sworn in and got to know members, I met a lot of members who, they'd been there for years and years and they never had been able to get meaningful legislation passed into law. So I feel really fortunate that when people talk about the fact that in Minnesota and across the country now, um, seniors who are diabetic and on insulin, they now have those costs capped at $35 a month. And that's 100,000 Minnesotans who no longer have to decide, do I, pay my rent, or do I buy groceries, or do I buy my medicine? So being able to address healthcare costs. And then the second example I'll give is just, we have such challenge in our country and in many of our communities around addiction and overdose deaths. And Narcan is now available over the counter in our communities. And I worked in my first couple of terms of Congress to help make that happen. So when you look back and say, you know what, we've actually improved people's lives, that makes you feel like being in public service really is worth having to get on a plane and come back and forth to Washington about 39 weeks a year.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, what's been the biggest challenge or something that you didn't expect going in?
I just think the polarization of our political system, where, you got sort of the blue team or the red team. The truth is, a lot of people don't like either blue or red teams right now. And so I just think the political polarization is something that I hope as the country moves forward that we continue to work on in our nation, because at the end of the day, you know, I believe that we have a lot more in common in this country. than not in common. And, when I go around our community, people don't really ask, are you a Democrat or you're a Republican? It's just a matter of, do you love your community? Are you a good neighbor? Do you help your neighbors when they're in need? Those sorts of things. So I hope at some point there's not as much political polarization in Washington.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've obviously had a very successful political career. For students like me and others who may want to go into public service someday, what advice would you give to those people?
My best advice is find something that you are really passionate about, whether that's the environment, whether that's, education or, the rising cost of tuition, whatever it is. Find a topic you're really passionate about, and then find either an organization that advocates for that issue and get involved, or find a local candidate, a congressional candidate, a U.S. Senate candidate, and campaign that shares your values on that issue and get involved in that campaign to work toward your passion area. There's nothing greater than, being able to work toward a better future for all of us. And so I would just say to young people, it's your turn. I've been working my whole life and I'm passionate about a number of issues, including folks being able to afford their health care. That was something I was incredibly passionate about. Use your own life experience to inform those areas. I grew up for part of my own childhood without health insurance. Look inside your own life and you'll find some places where you may not even know that you're really ready to start advocating for.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what do you think that young people can start doing like right now to make a difference in their communities?
Well, look, there's always a way to serve our communities, whether it's volunteering at a local food bank, if that's something that you're passionate about, getting involved in helping like minded leaders. Run for public office and win public office. I also really believe that it's important that our elected leaders start being a little bit younger in this country. Don't let anybody tell you that it's not your turn. If you see an opportunity as you get a little bit older to serve on, even the Soil and Water Commission or the school board or the city council, make sure that people know that your voice and your vote counts too.
Mhm. And then our final sort of closing question: when people look back on your career, what do you hope they'll say that you stood for?
Mm. What a great question. Look, I hope people say that I fought for working families in this country, whether that's to lower the cost of healthcare or make going to college for someone who wasn't born into wealth a little more accessible. Folks being able to afford their groceries. If people could say that I made a difference in their lives and that, even if you didn't agree with me on every single vote I ever took or position that I ever held, that people knew that I was doing it for the right reasons. That's what every single day I try to do as a member of Congress.
Yeah, noble cause. Thank you for coming on the show today. It was a pleasure to have you, and I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day.
Thanks so much, William. Best of luck.
I hope that you guys
Thank you.
enjoyed the interview. Once again, it was an honor to be able to work with Angie Craig. If you guys have any other officials that you'd like us to interview, feel free to leave them in the comments or reach out to us on email. If you guys have any questions that you'd like us to be asking specifically, feel free to leave those down in the comments below. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Make sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date, and I'll see you guys on the next interview.